afternoon and welcome to our second residential conveyancing forum for lawyers in Scotland. We're very grateful for the good comments we had from people who attended the first one and for some of the questions and dialogue we've had since. So we're once again joined by Ian Quayle, who will be leading the conversation, and will be joined later in the call by Dale Kime from In Touch, who have some very interesting products to do with client portals, case management, and it's all cloud-based. So she'll be joining us later to talk about that. But in the meantime, Ian, if you want to start off the conversation.
Hi, welcome, Robert. Welcome, everyone. Yeah, as Robert was saying, first of all, flowing on from our last occasion, two things to be aware of. One, I've got someone from the coal authority who will be coming along at a future event to do a presentation and to take questions about issues associated with coal. I've also got someone coming along from the Registers of Scotland to talk about a number of issues, one of which has been mentioned today in connection with the RCI, so we'll talk about that if we can today. And in addition to that, there's a number of other people that have expressed an interest in coming along and talking, so we'll make sure that they're available for the future. Remember, this event is your event. If you have any questions, any queries in connection with anything that is concerning you in connection with your conveyancing work, this is the vehicle, or this is the opportunity to talk about it. The way it'll work today is that I'm expecting Dale to join us at some point. So when she does, we'll join and look at her slides. In that on the last occasion, someone expressed an interest in knowing about what sort of case management systems were available for Scotland. I was talking to Dale probably the day after that first forum, and she said she'd come along, in that she has some firms in Scotland that are currently using her product. We will find more people, I'm sure, that are able to provide case management systems and other products that might be of interest to you, and we'll talk about those as and when it arises. I'm delighted that Robert's with me from Stewart Title. We'll be talking a little bit about Stewart Title in general terms, about product availability, etc., and points of contact. But the issues that I wanted to talk about today are contained in the following. I'll just find my slides, which is going to take a second or two, so just bear with me. Where are we? We're still a little bit further to go, I think. Yes, we are. So my topics of conversation for today, and remember, we can talk about anything that you want to talk about. That's absolutely fine. But the things I wanted to talk about were, first of all, the Building Safety Act 2022. Has anyone sort of looked at this as a transactional property lawyer and thought, hey, what's it all about? I have to tell you, as I mentioned in our first get-together, that in England, this is causing sleepless nights and causing absolute mayhem on the basis that it is so wide-ranging and so huge in implication. The law in Wales is slightly different, and that's got everyone jumping up and down. In Scotland, it has a part to play, and I just wondered if people were aware of what that part is and what they need to be aware of and what they need to do. So it seems to me that as far as Scotland is concerned, the Building Safety Act has a number of implications. First of all, a need to understand that it's possible to bring claims relating to defects in premises to which the Building Safety Act relates, and the limitation period has been extended. So as far as that extension is concerned, it is important to understand that you can now bring claims going back 15 and up to 30 years in connection with breaches of contract relating to workmanship, particularly in connection with fire safety or construction. So I want people to be aware of that. It's very important indeed. And the second thing that I wanted to touch on in that regard was the fact that there was a second thing that potentially was an issue for you, and that was an issue concerning the application of the Act in new builds. So can I ask Alan, Alison, Angela, as sort of the people first on my list today, have you come across any issues with regard to the Building Safety Act? Has the Law Society generated any guidance for you? Are you aware of its implications? My guess is that a lot of practitioners are not. It's not a direct issue from a conveyancer's perspective, but I think it is important that you appreciate the background with regard to the potentiality of the claim. And I've gotten people saying, no, they're not aware of it. What I'll try and do is for the next occasion that we're together, we'll have a look at how it relates to Scotland. As I say, I think it's more of an issue for commercial property lawyers and litigators. But I think it is important that you're aware that the Building Safety Act does bite and does have application in connection with Scotland. And again, I'm just going to try and dig out something else that I found about that if I can. It's just taking me a bit of time to find it. But there was some material that I had that, again, I'm happy to share now, which gives you a little bit of an insight, but I think you need to know a bit more relating to it. Okay, so Building Safety Act, I've only got one person saying not aware of it, not aware of any issues. If anyone else can just sort of reinforce that would be fine. And as I say, I'll get you some information relating to it as and when I can. We'll just have a look in chat. Yeah, a few people not aware of it. Right, I'll dig that out for you. As I say, it's not as big a deal. In England, it's got people absolutely mortified and it's stalling a lot of conveyancing transactions as a result. But in Scotland, I don't think it'll do that, but I just want you to be aware of how it impacts. The next thing I've got on my list is issues in connection with case management systems, and to discuss case management systems, and I'll leave that until Dale comes along. While we're waiting for Dale, has anyone got a case management system that they're using and that they're happy with or that they're not happy with, etc.? I thought that you'd be bombarded with case management systems and you'd have a plethora of choice. But if you haven't, again, that's something that we can draw to your attention and perhaps assist with. The next thing that I've got on my list, the third, complaints from clients and how to deal with them. We touched last time on negligence claims and case management system and complaints, etc. And I thought that what I would do is just have a look at what causes complaints, etc., what causes negligence claims. So I've done quite a bit of work, preparatory work with regard to that, and sort of highlighted a number of issues that I'm being told about as areas of claim and concern. And the first one concerns issues associated with access to properties and sort of private rights of way, etc. And again, the issue here, and it's very similar to the problems that arise in England that I'm sort of very familiar with. In other words, the actual physical extent of the right of access. I'll come back to you, unknown user, about 3E and their case management. We'll come on to that in a moment or two, but thank you. So I'm moving on now and just talking about issues associated with access. And again, if you're acting for a purchaser in assessing good and marketable title, it's necessary to make sure that a property can be accessed. If it can't be accessed, then the property isn't marketable. Can't be assumed that the appropriate access rights exist. You've got to check, particularly with regard to rural properties. And your client needs a clear and unambiguous route to the property from the public road. And there should be a report to the client about any restrictions or conditions of use. That's all fine and all sensible. The point I would make, however, is certainly with rights of access, one of the things that I encounter as a problem are issues of repair and maintenance. Who's responsible for repair and maintenance? And again, it's important that that's ascertained. And the other thing is, shows you really how sad I am. Over the weekend, I was looking at a negligence claim in England and Wales, where a right of way referred to a plan, and the plan showed the right of way as a yellow line along a track, and the yellow line sort of finished before the track reached the public highway. And the issue then was whether or not the right of way extended to the highway or not. The owner of the land over which the right of way ran said it didn't. The owner who was claiming the right of way said it did. It was really interesting. negligence claim arose as a consequence of a dispute between the parties. The person claiming the right of way lost and sued his solicitors as a consequence. Right, going back to software, unknown user is saying that we're looking at 3E and Mattersphere next year with a case management system. Anyone using that at the moment? And Priyanka, hi Priyanka, using Lawware in addition to Instant Office. What's that like? Priyanka, would you recommend it? Have there been any teething issues, etc.? While we're waiting for Priyanka, I once was asked by a firm to recommend a case management system going back years, and I knew a client of mine was using it, so I referred them, and I spoke to them about it, and they said, yeah, it's great, and so I recommended it. And then the firm that I recommended it to contacted me to say, well, we've bought it and we've used it, but it's not very good, and these are the problems. So I went back to the firm that recommended it and said, hey, you told me about this product, and he said it was great, and I've recommended it to someone else, and they're saying it's not so good. And the funny thing about it was the guy that I've spoken to said, well, hang on a minute, I'll just speak to some of the conveyancing team. And it transpired that they had exactly the same problems. The head of the conveyancing department was not aware of the problems that his team was encountering with regard to the case management system. So what I tend to do now, if anyone recommends anything, I won't speak to the head of department. I'll ask deal with someone front line to see what they say, and you tend then to get the truth, as it were, or you get the proper position. So Priyanka says Lawware, very happy with. Alan is saying Lawware for case management and V4 for accounts. So that's Lawware V5 and V4. Alan, happy with it? And you're saying version 5 is better. So Lawware seems to be the go-to product. Is that a fair summary of what people are saying? And people seem to be happy with it. Okay. Do you automatically get version 5? Or how does that work? De Nova, Kirsten. Okay, so why did you move from to De Nova, Kirsten? What was the thinking there? And has the Law Society sort of done any research or provided you any guidance with what sort of case management systems you should be looking at? Are there sort of recommended suppliers or anything like that? Yeah, so the Law Society's approved many of the features with De Nova. And was that why you changed, Kirsten? Anybody else? Anybody else looking at it, etc.? While I'm waiting for responses to that, I'll tell you something else I've been looking at. There's a guy called Paul Brown at W&JS Gordon in Forfar, and he's got a sort of a checklist, and he's won an innovation prize. I think he won it in September. Has anyone seen that? Is anyone using it? Cashroom loves version 4, guinea pigs for version 5, teething but better, Alan. That's often the case, isn't it? You know, I don't like being first in. If you can be second in, etc., then again, that can be useful. Or once it's been bedded in by different firms, you then having a look at it is useful. But that's really interesting. Okay, well, we'll see what Dale has to say when she joins us a little later. While I'm doing that, has anyone had any problems with regard to access in property transactions and determining access? I know last time, right, so Kirsten, one system incorporates risk assessment and ID uploads. Yeah, I think that's so important, isn't it, Kirsten? Certainly risk assessment is the thing, isn't it? Your insurers are sort of really concerned with that. I was just looking at, and I'm hoping to get Lockton Law, or I think are they the sole insurers for professional indemnity, or are they recommended insurers by the Law Society? I'm going to try and get someone from Lockton Law to come along and talk about avoiding negligence claims, etc. And I've been scouring after the last occasion some case law relating to delict in connection with negligence claims against conveyancers. I've got some points to talk about that if we have time this afternoon. Right, so, yeah, the idea about identification, uploading an electronic client identification is so important. Is anyone still sort of manually verifying client ID? Anybody doing that? And again, I think the other thing, Kirsten, with your risk assessment, ID uploads, etc., and dealing with this up front, do be aware that that can generate problems, because you think, well, all right, I've verified my client identity, that's it, tick, job done. It isn't. You've got to be constantly aware of risk as the transaction progresses. And again, with regard to risk assessment systems, they're great when we're onboarding clients and when we're starting the transaction, but please be alive to the fact that there could be issues during the life of the transaction that require a reassessment. Alison, you're doing a manual and digital checks as well. Yeah, that's fine. The key is to just keep it under review. Again, it's like money laundering. It's like everything else. We do it at the start, and then we think, right, that's it, put to bed. Let's get the transaction rolling. And you can't really do that. Kirsten, right. So that's interesting. So there's 4 separate risk assessments through the transaction. So there's a constant review, and that will be recorded, Kirsten. So that's brilliant, isn't it? And other risk assessments, there's in essence the same assessment. So I always say to practitioners, we should be assessing the transaction risk, the client risk, third-party risk, and then we've got fraud, money laundering, etc. Is that how it works, Kirsten? Veronica, verify ID face-to-face occasionally if the clients are known to complete the ID checks electronically. Yeah, again, you've got to offer choice. But the point I'm emphasizing, I think, is you've got to keep that under review and just, be aware that as the transaction progresses, there could be issues, which are big issues that obviously generate risk, or there could be sort of a cumulative effect, a drip of things that are causing problems. Kirsten, transactional risk and client risk, and then review forms for each of these transactions throughout. Kirsten, do you choose when there's the additional assessment, or is it fixed at certain points in the transaction? But I think that's really interesting and really useful to have that sort of facility. Case management systems and everything, I think, is great as an aid. It doesn't sort of alleviate responsibility or liability, but they're great tools, aren't they, to sort of make sure that we're on the right track. I was talking to a very experienced conveyancer recently, and what he was saying is, well, he's got an inexperienced team, and so these case management systems, this use of artificial intelligence for putting into reports on title, this sort of thing, are fantastic for them. But he also said, hey, it's great for me, because even though I'm very experienced, from time to time I will miss something, and it's nice to know that I've got a system that will keep me on track, if we pardon the pun. So Kirsten, that gets thumbs up, does it? Jonathan, hi Jonathan, using manual, what people recommend? Yeah, Jonathan's asking about electronic ID and asking what do people recommend. So over to you, please. What can we tell Jonathan we would recommend for electronic ID? Are there standalone products, everyone, or is it a question if we've got a case management system that's part and parcel of it? So Jonathan's posed the question to the forum. All right, while we're waiting for that, Kirsten, your partner sets it as to when it should be done, and a time setting. Can't settle without all the risk assessments being completed. Right. So, okay. Gosia, thank you. I haven't seen a Scottish title report program, but I've seen loads in England, right? And I'm sure there'll be someone doing that for you in Scotland. I'll check and find out for you, but there must be something there. Jonathan says instant office. Equifax check to validate name and address. Yeah, okay. Kirsten says Amicus as a software. Alan as well. Hey, Jonathan, there you are. Look at that. We've got lots of people saying Amicus as that. So thanks for that. That's great. Okay, where were we? Yeah, this issue that Gossi is asking about, and I threw into the mix and assumed that there would be a sort of report on title software package out there. I'm assuming, as no one's responded, that there isn't. But what you've got in England, which is really interesting, is artificial intelligence. Well, no, let's get it right. You've got a few systems. Some systems, basically devised by search companies, are pulling data from searchers into a template or a framework, okay? So I would say that's sort of the most commonplace thing that we're seeing, which is old hat really. And then we're seeing some companies using artificial intelligence to extract data and then to translate it into layman's terms and giving either a set response or giving you a library of terminology that you can manually input into the report. So again, I'm really intrigued to see if there's anything out there in Scotland that is similar. I have spoken to one or two English companies about it. Yeah, Third Fort's the company I know, Stewart. Why are you going back to Third Fort, Stewart? What's the issue there? I'm interested in that, but I'll dig some stuff out and see. I think it would be harder in Scotland to do what our friends have been doing in England, but certainly the English Land Registry are keen as mustard to encourage and work with people in connection with migrating data into reports. And I'm sure the registers of Scotland will be have similar thoughts. I'm convinced of that. And having spoken to them, I'm sure of it. But it might be that there isn't a company as yet who's invested in the product. But we'll have a look. Perhaps that's something for someone to talk to. So, Stewart, yeah, really interested in why we've gone back to Third Fort. I'm assuming that there's an issue with Amicus that you didn't like. So if you could get back to me on that, that would be brilliant. Thank you. All right, customer service, don't have a call center. Yeah, price is good and worldwide coverage. Okay. Yeah, Amicus UK only. Yeah, that's an interesting thing, isn't it? That touches on some RCI stuff that I want to talk about if we have time before we finish. Stuart, thanks for that. That's really appreciative. And again, you know, those are factors that people need to build in. I was talking about hot topics for negligence, wasn't it? That's my sort of pet subject, really, to be honest with you. So again, just looking at that, one or two things to note. We've talked about access. I've got some more notes here. Just bear with me. I'll pull them up on this other screen and we'll have a look at what else I'm seeing as potential for problems and leading to negligence claims. We've talked about access. Boundary issues. Again, what are people doing in connection with boundary identification and making sure that clients are properly advised in connection with boundaries? I've dealt with recently a number of disputes concerning boundary identification. One matter at the moment concerns a new build site that was pegged out by the developer's seller. And the argument is, where is the boundary in connection with the pegs? Because a legal boundary is in essence a pencil line on the ground that differentiates my property from your property. And if we're going to use a peg or a marker post to denote the boundary, then is the center line of the marker post the boundary, the eastern face or the western face? That in essence is what this dispute concerns. Involves an area of land that's approximately 2 centimeters wide, but the people are quite prepared to litigate about it. I always say, when you're acting in a conveyancing transaction, always as part of your initial test or risk analysis is to say, you know, is there any boundary sensitivity? You know, have boundaries been moved? Have there been disputes? Does the client intend to do something with the property that means it is boundary sensitive? And if it's that, then it's a question of just setting realistic client expectation on the fact that plans, etc., generally speaking, are notoriously unreliable. And a red line or a black line on a plan, when you scale it up or scale it down, could in essence be a meter and a half wide. So absolutely no use whatsoever. So again, just be wary of that. That is a thing that, as I say, is causing or does cause negligence claims. And what else have I got on my list? Yeah, we've talked about boundaries, other issues that can be problematical that people are encountering. Of course, issues associated with what is a good and marketable title. Remember, a good title and a marketable title are not the same thing. It's important that we ensure that what is being offered to us is a good and marketable title, and that we report to the client if the title is defective. Right. Yeah, that's the point, Alison, right? All registers have this issue of tolerance, okay? The Scottish system is better than the English system. A land registry title plan in England can't be relied upon. It reveals a general boundary, not a legal boundary. And therefore, the problem that I have is that I have practitioners sending title plans to clients that look as if they're official documents from the land registry that clients then rely upon to measure their boundaries. And therefore, what will happen is one neighbour will have a title plan and will measure their boundary using that plan. And they'll show the next door neighbour, or they'll intend on putting a fence or a wall there where the boundary appears to sit. And the neighbour gets their title plan out and it shows a different location. And before you know it, Third World War is declared. Right, so I'm going to deal with Alison's point. So Alison, so let's assume I'm a client of yours, right? And I'm buying, I don't know, I'm buying a steading, or I'm buying a rural property, and I'm intent on knocking down an existing building, and I want to build a garage or something, and I need to know where my western boundary is so I can ensure that my application relating to planning, etc., is appropriate, and that once I start working, I'm not doing anything that encroaches onto a neighbouring property. How would you deal with that, Alison? While I'm waiting for that, and anyone else, please chip in. Priyanka, a good title and a marketable title are two different things. Okay, a good title is a title that a reasonable conveyancer would be willing to accept on behalf of a client. A marketable title is something that could be offered to the market at an appropriate price, and would be a willing purchaser would be willing to pay that price. And it also includes the fact that a conveyancer would be willing to accept it as well, in accordance with reasonable conveyancing practice. There's a bit of case law on that in England, nothing in Scotland that I've found so far, Priyanka. So I'm asking this issue about boundary identification and what would we do? While I'm waiting for that, Priyanka, if you ping me an email at some point, I'll give you, there's some old English cases on it that will help, I think. But as I say, I haven't seen anything in Scotland. Robert, hi, Robert Kelly from Stewart Title. Robert, I've talked about sort of some issues that can cause problems, and just generally, if you can share with delegates what sort of product you have at Stewart Title that could assist someone, say with a boundary problem or an access problem.
Thanks, Ian. Yes, I mean, we've got a number of problems. Oh no, problems. Sorry, we've got a number of policies that can help with problems
Right,
there.
yeah.
They are available either on a bespoke basis by inquiry to our Scottish underwriters, or on our online system, Stewart Solution, which we're currently doing some work on to improve use for people. We have been sending out some publicity on that to people, but if anyone here is interested, we can do a training session for them and show them how to get access to the policies. Most of the transactional risks you're talking about here are available online. So that's the easiest way there. Whereas any element of development or change of use, then it would need to be a bespoke policy. But if we want to get in touch, I think you've got our details of this, our Scottish rep, who will be able to talk to you and do some training sessions for people going forward.
Yeah, so John and Liz are able to sort of talk to people about it, Robert. I think, Robert, what we might do at a forum in the future, if I can impose on you, is to ask if you could do a demonstration with regard to that. I think it'd be really useful, so people could see how they access product and what they have to do. Could we do that, Robert? Will that be?
Yes, that's something we can do when the new system is online. It is simple, as you and I know, Ian. Even dinosaurs like you and me can get a quote in 90 seconds. So anyone more able should be able to do it very quickly. So yeah, we'll happily do a demonstration at the next forum on that.
Great, good. Talking about dinosaurs, Robert, there's a friend of mine who to this day still says, I'm going to go on the Google, and every time he says it, I smile broadly and think I like the idea of that. That's about my level, to be honest with you, and I'm quite happy to concede that yes, I am a dinosaur, not a problem. Alison, title plan a good guide, yeah. So you tell clients that, but you say they can't rely on it, and have to look. So again, Alison, so I'm a client. Are you going to tell me to inspect? Are you going to make inquiry of the seller about have there been disputes or have boundaries moved or anything of that nature? Or what would we do just to protect the client? In my ridiculous example that you're acting for me and there's a boundary sensitivity issue. While I'm waiting for that, Alison, and indeed anyone else, Stephen, yeah, great idea. If anyone has any specific title issues or they're struggling to find insurance cover for, please contact Stephen or Robert or John or Liz, and I'm sure they will gladly help you with regard to any assistance that you would want. So I'm just interested on this issue of boundaries, just to see what people have to say. The other thing that I'm interested in with regard to boundaries, and again, I'm just looking at my notes in that connection, is again, this idea about making sure the deed plan is consistent with the description of the property. Again, loads of issues and loads of problems where you have a plan and then the description of the property and the two don't tally. Again, what the courts tend to say is interpreting which prevails. It's if you look at the site, which makes the most sense. Yeah, to disclose boundary disputes. Yeah. So they have a contractual duty to disclose that. Thank you for that, Stewart. Again, as far as that is concerned, so there might not be a dispute, but we might not know precisely where a boundary actually sits. So what about sort of entering into a formal boundary agreement with a neighbour? Would that be a possibility, Stewart? In England, with the English Land Registry, you can make what's called a determined boundary application, which gives you an accurate fix as to location of legal boundary. The legal boundary is fixed and noted on the register, but I don't think there's an equivalent in Scotland. But I guess a formal boundary agreement could be entered into. The weakness with formal boundary agreements in England is that a formal boundary agreement in England is binding on the parties, but not necessarily binding on successors in title. Okay, last time we were talking, we talked about ownerless land and how we deal with it. And again, anyone got any ideas? If we've got a parcel of land that's potentially important to us, how can we ascertain ownership? Is there anything that we can do? Are there any steps or measures that we can take in connection with ownerless land? Again, this might be a problem for us with access. That's where I'm sort of envisaging it, but I'm just also thinking about other potential problems or issues that might arise. So anyone? And I'm just thinking about some other issues that I want to talk about. So we've talked about, someone mentioned surveyors earlier, right? And this is an interesting thing. Where were we? Someone mentioned surveyors. Yeah, Alison. Hi, Alison. All right. So again, in my little world there, where I'm buying a property and I'm worried about a boundary, is a land surveyor going to be able to produce a report that will give me the location of a legal boundary? The problem I have with surveyors is, I think, Alison, they're only as good as the data or information that's produced to them. And certainly in connection with litigation, I see people produce or obtaining a surveyor's report on acquisition, and that they use to try and get their head around where a boundary sits. But then there is litigation, and then as far as the court is concerned, the court wants an independent surveyor to produce a report, and these reports can be really expensive. I've seen people pay £5,000-6,000 for a chartered land surveyor's report. Chloe, hi Chloe. Right, let's just look at this. And Alison, thank you for that. Right. You offer investigative reports where you examine parcel of land, identify owners most likely to be in ownership of the larger area of ground. Chloe, can you put your details in the chat box there for people? And again, Chloe, what I might do, if I may, if you ping me an email, I'd love you to sort of come along at another forum and just discuss a little bit in more detail about the service that you can offer. And again, I think that would be really useful. Thank you for that. Yeah, Alison. So we might have it in the Sasson register. Well, okay, that's fine. And is that about all we can do? To be honest with you, anything further we can do? Hi, Ewan. Thanks for joining us. By the way, once again, folks, I'm really impressed with the number of people that attend these events. It's great. Remember that for future events, send an email to me or to Stewart Title, and we'll incorporate whatever the question is and try and deal with it. Or alternatively, we'll get someone along to come along. So Chloe, thank you very much. All search at DM Hall, brilliant. So Chloe, I will sort of drop you a note by email, and we'll get together, or someone from your firm can come along and talk. That would be great. Registers can also, yeah, they can investigate land ownership. Yeah, that's fine. And again, Robert, you have a product, don't you, in connection with where there's an issue about land and a boundary problem or an ownership problem?
Yes, we've got various products there that can be used depending on the nature of it, whether it's actually an access problem, boundary problem, whatever.
Right.
So we can look at that again.
Yeah.
People send us details. We can look at the product for them.
Thanks for that, Robert. I think the important thing with regard to that, just stealing Robert's thunder for a moment or two, be careful about what you investigate. I think in a situation where we're not sure about land, the position is that it may be better to speak to Robert or the team to try and ascertain or obtain a policy rather than undertake investigation, which potentially could blight or prevent a policy from being issued at a later date. Robert, if you'll come back to me on that a little bit, could you?
Yeah, that's entirely right. You do need to be careful. The last thing you want to do is to alert a neighbour to a potential problem there, because that might affect your ability to get insurance going forward. So it's when you identify a problem, the best thing to do is to look at the options available and then outline them. And ultimately, it is your client's choice with your recommendation. So decide which route you want to go down. But it could well be, if you decide to go down the route of contacting the neighbour, you won't be able to come back for insurance at a later date.
Yeah, thanks for that, Robert. Thank you. Gerald, hi, Gerald. Does ownership land not fall to the Crown? Great question. I mean, all land theoretically belongs to the Crown, doesn't it? And I have over the years done work with the Crown Estate and the Treasury solicitors. And I forget well, no, I don't forget. I can remember the Crown inherits approximately 115 residential houses a year, courtesy of its residuary ownership. But the Crown makes its money predominantly out of limited companies that are dissolved, because if those companies own land or asset, and the big asset that they own invariably will be things like copyright or intellectual property, then that vests in the Crown. The other thing, Gerald, that's really interesting is if where land vests in the Crown can disclaim it. There's a sort of subcategory of ownership that means that if, say, land was contaminated and the land vesting in the Crown would generate liability for the Crown, they can escape liability. So there is this sort of form of ownership that the Crown can maintain that doesn't attract any form of liability attached to the ownership. Quite interesting. The Treasury solicitors, I'm sure, on their website have guidance about how to deal with land that is vested in the Crown and how to get it back, etc. And again, from memory, they were very helpful. If you encountered a problem with that, they would be not obstructive but very cooperative in what could be done. Where, for example, land was owned by a company that had been dissolved, that was rented or leased or something of that nature, what tenants could do, that sort of thing. Priyanka, yeah, neighbouring title sheet can be useful. But the problem with that, of course, is that we're back to that point about can the boundary sheet, can the title sheet be relied upon? That seems to be the problem that can be encountered. But yeah, thanks for that, Priyanka. That's fine. Okay, right. We talked about last time plan reports and how difficult they are to achieve. Anyone want to comment on that? Any comments? Any ideas relating to that? All right, thanks. While we're waiting for that, we've got Stewart Title's contact details there. and my details too. Thank you for that, everybody. Great. Cheers, Stephen. Right. Stephen, hi Stephen. Land Ownership Scotland, very efficient and helpful. Yeah, okay, fine. Thank you for that. That's great. Don't know Land Ownership Scotland, Stephen, but I'm gonna dig them out and see what we can find out about. I'm assuming that's a service that you have to pay for, Stephen. Is that right? And can you explain how they helped you or what they can do to help practitioners? I'm just making note of that. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Okay, now the RCI and Section 23A. I've asked the Registers of Scotland to come along and talk about this. They said they will come and talk about it. But what is the problem with regard to this? What's causing everyone to get this as an issue, a major issue? It was raised last time, and it's been raised again, I think. So anybody? What is the problem? I looked at this morning, and I looked at the ROS and didn't get an awful lot of data from it. So it seems to be a problem that is currently unresolved. But has anyone encountered the problem? Anyone got any ideas relating to it? Just waiting for people. And while I'm waiting, I'm just looking at something else on the screen. Just trying to look at land ownership for this, like Stephen suggested there. I mean, this issue about land ownership and verifying identity is a real issue, isn't it? It's an issue in England, it's an issue in Scotland, and again, it is absolutely essential that we don't just ascertain landowners, but also tenants as well, and people that have controlling interests, known as associates. So we're all familiar with the ROS guidance. Just trying to see when that guidance was produced. It was a while ago, wasn't it? But what's causing people problems? Is it the issue of what is a controlling interest? Right, Chloe. Right. Yeah, thanks, Chloe. That's the problem, is it? Right. Okay, so it's a governmental issue. Right, so it's a sort of thanks, Stephen, for that. I'll dig that out. So Chloe, yeah, I've seen the ROS webinars. And again, well, can I tell you, right? Here's something. Robert, you might remember this, but years ago, I was speaking at a conference and the Law Society of England and Wales were in attendance, right? And in the past, there was a code of conduct for solicitors. And there were rules, and you knew exactly what you could and couldn't do. Right. And then what happened is they changed all that and said, right, no, we're going to have a series of principles. We're going to have some general guidance. And I was listening to a guy who was a director, I think, of the Law Society of England and Wales. And what he said was this: if we create rules, then solicitors, conveyancers, the legal profession know exactly what they can and can't do. And in our experience, what they'll do is they'll go as close to the line as they possibly dare without going beyond it. And that worries us. So what we've done is we've created a mist or a fog. And what we're saying is somewhere in that mist or fog, and we're not going to tell you where, and we're not going to enable you to blow the fog or the mist away, but somewhere in there is a line that you can't cross. And the idea is that if we do that, then people don't go anywhere near the mist or fog and therefore go nowhere near the line. Now, as a concept, genius. As a practicality, a nightmare. Because, it's not quite as simple as that, is it? As transactions progress, we have to go into the mist or we have to go into the fog, and we don't know where the lines are until we cross the line and someone spots it, and then we're in a whole heap of trouble. So when that was mentioned at the conference, people were in uproar. But that's what we've got in England and Wales at the moment. And that, to an extent, I think, is what you have in Scotland with regard to this, an exact similar thing, that, you know, it's impossible to determine what we can and can't do. It's unclear, as Chloe suggests. So anyone got any sort of working rules that they think are useful in connection with the Section 23A stuff? Anybody? So I'm just waiting for people to add to that. While we're waiting, I don't know, Stephen, has Dale been able to join us or not? Just waiting for Stephen Smith to let me know about that.
Sorry, I hadn't heard anything yet. I'm just trying to get in touch with her, so I'm not
Okay, that's
sure
fine.
joining at this stage.
Yeah, I think she had some technical issues, so we'll leave it at that, and perhaps she can join us on a future occasion. And what we'll do is we've got a record of these other companies, and we might see if they can come along as well. And again, interested to if anyone else has had any other ideas or any other recommendations. Okay. So someone asked about Land Ownership Scotland, and Priyanka's asking about charges. So what do they charge? Anyone help me on Land Ownership Scotland? Stephen, do you know? And no one's got back to me about reporting on title. So my guess is there isn't a product out there at the moment that acts as a template or framework for you. The Law Society of England and Wales has a model form of report on title. There are reports on title for commercial transactions too. And there are sort of forms of report on title that a lot of the search companies produce, and they use, either to a greater or lesser degree, artificial intelligence to migrate data into them. And I'm not for the life of me saying they're brilliant or they're so sophisticated that you and I can hang up our boots and retire. Far from it, but they're useful tools, really useful tools. And again, you know, as far as artificial intelligence is concerned, you know, it's pretty scary stuff, isn't it, as to how it can be used. Again, it's a slave rather than a master, isn't it? It's again, it's a tool that we can use. And again, I don't know if anyone read about this, but I think there's a new product coming out in November, some artificial intelligence that will enable busy practitioners to have artificial intelligence attending meetings on their behalf. Well, that's just Star Trek material for me. And as I say, I'm going to revert to my dinosaur mode and say thanks very much, but I don't want to know about that. So anyone got any information about fees? And anyone got any information about the reporting on title product or products that are out there? If there aren't, and given the fact that we don't have Dale joining us today, which is a bit of a pity, what I'd like to do is see if anyone else has got any issues, either to discuss today or to discuss next week. I repeat that the Registers of Scotland will attend some of these events, but they're busy at the moment and can't put anyone forward just yet. Right. We'll look at this. Right, Stephen. So yeah. So they're going to give a quote on a case-by-case basis. That's sensible. And again, looking to confirm ROS fees for investigating boundary disputes. So Priyanka, is Stephen talking about his product, and are you talking about the ROS? So has anyone got an indication of what those fees are, or again, is that a case-by-case basis? Yeah, land ownership. Thanks, unknown user. That's great. So I'm interested in the ROS fees for investigating boundary disputes. What happens in England is if there is a boundary dispute, the land registry will normally send a surveyor out. If you want to make what's called a determined boundary application to fix the legal boundary, you do that yourself. You produce a plan that has to be land registry compliant. It goes to with the application, and then the land registry deal with it. So with a determined boundary application, the land registry is dependent on the practitioner providing the plan and a report. I think the land registry will come out and inspect to check that everything's okay, but they won't actually investigate the dispute for you. The other thing, Priyanka, that I think is important, again, where you've got a boundary dispute or a boundary problem, have a look at an English website called Property Protocols and have a look what's called a boundary dispute protocol. Obviously, it's English law, but there's a lot of procedural stuff there that I think is really useful. And in particular, the use of mediation or arbitration for dispute resolution. The English courts hate the idea of boundary disputes being dealt with by the courts. In fact, there was a decision where a judge said, win or lose, you're not going to get your costs when you're arguing about, a 4-meter square strip of land, and you've incurred all these legal costs to try and resolve the dispute. Win or lose, you're not getting your costs. Each side's going to be liable for their own. And I've also seen some courts saying, High Court and County Court saying, don't come to us with a boundary dispute unless you tried mediation first. Right, let's just have a look at what else we've got. Gosia, carried out by her search team on hand. Thank you. Thanks again, Gosia, for that. That's brilliant. £60 plus VAT. Brilliant. There's our answer. Okay, Gosia, can I ask you a question then? How frequently will that service be utilised? Because I think for £60 plus VAT, in my little scenario that I gave you, hey, I'm going to do it, aren't I? If my lawyer tells me this is what's available, I'm going to do it. How commonplace is it sort of generally? Would our firm saying, hey, look, we should do this as a matter of course? That would be interesting. And thanks, Gosia. That's great. Brilliant. So again, Gosia, question, how commonly would you say you're getting those requests? Is it when there's a problem, or are you getting some people that are risk averse, clients that are risk averse saying, hey, there's a service there, I'm going to use it? Obviously via their conveyancer. Yeah. So I'm just waiting for Gosia to get back to me on that. While we're waiting for Gosia, anyone else got any burning issues or problems that they want to talk about? Other than nightmare clients. Nightmare clients, eh? We've all got them, haven't we? We've all had them. So demanding. Dale has joined us. Good afternoon, Dale. For the last 5 minutes. For the last 5 minutes, Dale, I've been singing your praises. So, Dale, we've been talking about case management systems for Scotland. And when we spoke, which I think was shortly after the first of these events, you mentioned that you have some clients in Scotland. So, Dale, if you can hear me and if we can facilitate your access to microphone, we've only got a few minutes. So it would be lovely to hear from you. And just if you could share with us your experience of your case management system in the Scottish marketplace, that would be lovely.
Hi, yes, absolutely. Sorry, my mic wasn't working. I would love to just get in touch, and thank you for having me. I'm sorry I'm a little bit later than planned. No problem. InTouch is a conveyancing case management system, and it's been designed from the point of view to keep that end client up to date. So the slide that you guys can see here is the stakeholder portal. So what this stakeholder portal does, it reduces those progress chasing phone calls. It keeps everything secure in one place, so you can store all of your documents in that place. And most importantly, it educates the client on what's going on and what you guys are doing behind the scenes. You guys are brilliant at doing your conveyancing, but one thing, because you're so busy, you struggle to communicate what you're doing behind the scenes. Essentially, if you use InTouch as your conveyancing case management system, you'll tick off tasks, and what that will do, it will actively update the client. There's no need for them to contact you to find out what's going on. And then there's a little question mark section on here. And this is where you can really market to your clients, explaining what the task means and set those realistic timeframes. If a client knows that once you order searches, they're not going to come back straight away, they won't be ringing you up saying, where are they? They will get an understanding of the timeline. And it's really great for when you hit delays. when you raise inquiries with the other side solicitor, sometimes things slow down. And so if you pop notes on the stakeholder portal, letting them know that there's a bit of a delay because you're waiting for this back, again, it's just keeping them up to date and they're appreciating how hard you're working for them on their behalf. Now, the great thing about InTouch is that we are used in England, but we're also used in Scotland as well. And that's because everything you see on the screen is completely configurable. So all of your milestones here will suit your firm and your processes. The information you put under the question mark section here, again, will suit your firm and processes. And we're even used in Australia. And again, that's in different jurisdiction and in a different conveyancing model. So it just shows how you can tailor InTouch to suit your needs and your processes. And it isn't just a one size fits all.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks for that. So just so that we're right there, you were saying you have clients in Scotland that you're using this.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
That's great.
So yeah,
so Dave,
they're one of our big clients in Scotland.
Right. So if anyone wants a demonstration of this, they just contact you, and I forget which. I'm just conscious of time. I'm sure we've got your contact details. There we are, and that's the bottom of that slide. Yeah.
Perfect, and I've just put it in the chat as well. So it's Dale, DALE at intouch.cloud, and I'd love to give everybody a demo of InTouch to show you what it is that we've made here.
Dale, that's really kind of you. Thank you. I hope you had a nice lunchtime and you didn't have too much alcohol. I hope that's the reason you weren't with us earlier. Is it?
Definitely not. I haven't stopped all morning. It's been one of those days.
Thank you very much, Dale. Lovely for that. What I'm going to do is we were just talking about something else, and I was asking Gosia about the product in connection with the searches, the land register search, and we've got details there. Only use it if in doubt as to who the owner of the property is and suspect an issue with boundary or servitudes for access or wayleave. Thanks for that. That's great. And Priyanka's asked a question, land title investigation, property title investigation. Priyanka, we'll look at that next time because we're out of time. Richard, you've joined us right at the very end of today's presentation. So we have recorded today. We'll make that available to everyone. What I'm going to do is just skip along with the slides again to the end of the slides and say to everyone, a massive thank you for attending. Again, these things I absolutely adore on the basis that you are so willing to share experience and knowledge and give us an opportunity to find out about what you're wanting to know. I repeat, please email us with regard to any questions or queries that you have in connection with work. Tell your colleagues it's a free event sponsored by Stewart Title, so it doesn't cost anything to come along, and we're more than willing to talk about anything that anyone would like to talk about. Dale, thank you for coming along. It's very kind of you. Thank everyone for listening. Priyanka, our pleasure as usual. Massive thank you to Stephen Smith, Robert Kelly, Liz and John from Stewart Title for organising this, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the November meeting and forum. We won't be having anything in December. Those of you that have had this terrible weather, etc., I hope you've been safe and it hasn't been too disruptive. Thanks for coming along. See you all soon. Have a lovely day. Stay safe. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.